Welcome back to Test Don't Guess Tuesday. This is Melissa Hall-Klepacki, your functional gut health expert and hostess here, talking about the GI map gut test. Every week I read a GI map gut test, talk a little bit about patient symptomatology and subsequent treatment and protocol to get you a better sense of, number one, how to read these tests for yourself, and two, when they might be indicated. So this is a really interesting case this week. This was a teenager who was on the autism spectrum, also had a few tics, had seen several practitioners before me, was gluten-free, dairy-free, and sugar-free very strictly, was doing better on a ketogenic diet. So a ketogenic diet is one that is very, very low in carbohydrates. And they would notice that anytime there was a carb added to the diet in any significant amount, the tics got worse, which is interesting. When we did a gut test, we did notice a few really interesting things this week, things that I hadn't expected to find. You know, obviously, we know that the gut controls neurotransmitters, and we would assume that if the brain's not working correctly, that the gut is somehow devastatingly damaged. And so that's what we wanted to get a better sense of. That's what we took a look at with the GI map test. And this is a reminder that you can order your own GI map test at digestivediscovery.com, and I'll show you how to read it. So without further ado, let's get on to his GI map test. So we dig into the first page of the GI map, and we're not going to spend any time here because you'll notice here in the middle column of his results that everything is normal. I'm going to go through this really quickly. I usually explain how to read this first page. However, because there's a lot to show you, I don't want to spend time here. If you're not familiar with how to read these tests, go back and watch a previous episode before you come to this one, because it is more complicated. This is page 2 of the GI map test, and you'll notice here at the top that he has no results. There's nothing detectable for protozoa or for any of these worms. So we leave that section untouched, and we go to the more important section here at the bottom. Now, this is the intestinal health markers section, and this gives us a really good picture of what's happening with his overall health based on his gut health. So we can see here that the steatocrit, which is, are we finding fat in the stool? Is it not being digested properly? And here it's telling us, no, that's doing well. He's digesting his fat well. Elastase, we see, what that is telling us is digestive enzymes could be better. So remember, when we think about constipation, we always want to look above. So we're dealing with constipation is generally, right, an issue in the colon. However, we look to the small and large intestine, then we look up into the stomach, and then we even look to the way that we're eating and chewing our food, and obviously what we're putting in our mouth, right, even external to our body, becomes very important in that end result. So here we see that he definitely could benefit from some digestive enzymes, which we'll have to figure out as we go on reading this test. GI markers for beta-glucuronidase and occult blood are both within normal limits, nice and low. That's what we want to see. Immune response, you'll see here his secretory IgA is very, very high. There is a fire raging somewhere. And we know that I think there's actually a book called Brain on Fire that talks about autism. And so we know that these people with autism have very high levels generally of inflammation. And here on that test, it's showing us, yeah, there is a fire raging. Anti-gliadin IgA is very low. You'll see he's not eating gluten, maybe exposed to gluten here and there. But I would expect that to be very high had he not been on a gluten-free diet. Remember, being on a gluten-free diet also will help your inflammation levels. So it's a good thing that he's following that diet. Eosinophil activation protein here is low. That's great. Inflammation, as shown by the calprotectin level, creeping up, and zonulin, which is an add-on test I don't often run for GI map, we ran it here, is showing it's creeping higher and higher. That is a test for leaky gut. And so I would suspect that he would have some leaky gut and so needing some gut healing. And I usually work on leaky gut towards the end of protocols. After we've done the wiping out of whatever shouldn't be there and the building back up of what we need, usually my last step is repair. Okay, this is page 3 of the GI map here, and you'll notice, not so bad. I would have suspected things to be a lot worse. However, you'll notice that Pseudomonas microbes are really overgrowing, right? 3 times the normal level. Something that needs to be knocked down for sure. When I look at this commensal overgrowth microbe section, here you'll see with methanobacteria and D. Silvibrio, both a little bit high. That was where I start to see leaky gut, or sorry, SIBO happening. And I would suspect that if you didn't have enough good uh, digestive enzymes in your stomach to kill all the bacteria that are making its way down there, then as they make their way through the intestines, if you don't have a speedy transit time, then that bacteria will grow as it makes its way through your intestines. And then we start to see these numbers creep up. So not too high yet, but I would want to watch those with him. And then the commensal inflammatory and autoimmune bacteria. This is where I get nervous, right? When we start to see these numbers high, we know that some of these bacteria for sure result in inflammatory disorders or autoimmune, what are called autoimmune disorders right now. Enterobacter specifically, we see when mucosal lining is weak, and we already know that he has some leaky gut capacity with that zonulin test. So I would really want to work to get this number down and increase his mucosal health, right? That's a big sign of what they're calling IBD disease. So the rest here, normal with fungi and yeast, normal with viruses. Just the 2 places we want to pay attention to are this Pseudomonas overgrowth and this Enterobacter that's causing that inflammation. Okay, and page 4, really important here to note, Heliobacter pylori, H. pylori, is very high here. That is a bacteria that burrows into the lining of the stomach. It secretes an enzyme to lower your stomach acid, which is probably why we saw the digestive enzymes being low, right? The capacity for the stomach to do its job has been decreased. Therefore, we expect overgrowth of bad bacteria in the intestines. And oftentimes, because of slower transit time, we see constipation. And that's exactly what he's complaining about, other than the tics, right? And some of the autism. So we take a look at the last section here, commensal and keystone bacteria. Paying particular attention to the fact that Akkermansia here is very low. It's below the detectable limit. We know that Akkermansia muciniphila is one of the keystone bacteria, means it belongs in the gut. It has a specific job. And the job of that bacteria is actually to eat away at the lining of the intestine to promote new growth of lining of the intestine. So it's really essential that that's there. And that is a beautiful one. We can replace that. There's actually a very specific strain of probiotic called Akkermansia muciniphila, made by a company called Pendulum. And I would probably work over time, probably 3 months of supplementation for him with Akkermansia supplements. And we look at the bottom, we see Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes, both beautiful levels, and the ratio also great. We pay most attention, reminder, to that ratio. And he does have a very clean diet, right? He's fed by his mother, again, gluten-free, dairy-free, and sugar-free. So what do? We need to bring down the level of H. pylori, and I'd like to not do that with an antibiotic, because that will further harm his gut. So we like to use products like mastic gum, very successful against H. pylori, and takes a while to treat. You'll notice here that there is a virulence factor. We can talk about that here at the top under H. pylori. There's a series of them, and the one that's positive for him is the virulence factor OIPA. That's outer inflammatory protein A. And it explains why levels of inflammation are sky high for him. So the H. pylori, again, treated with mastic gum. Also, I really like oil of oregano is great for H. pylori, but it will also take care of that Pseudomonas that we saw. Let me go back to that page. Here at the top, the Pseudomonas that we saw will be knocked down by some of that oil of oregano, and also that Enterobacter also knocked down by oil of oregano. I think the dose is 60 milligrams, 50 to 60 milligrams 3 times a day, and mastic gum twice a day, 2 capsules. And that's how we treated him. You know, once the inflammation levels come down and we can heal the gut, then there is a gut healing protocol. There's a couple products that I like to use at the end of any sort of killing spree, right? Oil of oregano, it sounds like it's innocuous, but it really does an amazing job at clearing out the microbiome. And then I like to rebuild the gut, and I like to use a good leaky gut compilation for that. So this has been another Test Don't Guess Tuesday. I hope you learned something really interesting, this one, especially just with so much inflammation, and we can see what's driving that clearly with what's overgrowing. So if you like what you see, stick around for next week. I'm Melissa Hall-Klepacki, and if you want to order your own GI map test, there's a whole educational portal I built along with an AI bot, which is very cool, on the inside of digestivediscovery.com. Head over there, order your own test, and maybe we'll be reading one of your tests in the near future.